Diversity has been the center of Kaycee Evan's life. His experiences have spanned from being a musician, composer, actor, and teacher to working as a social service professional and in the hospitality industry. In the late 1980s, after transitioning to life in the Sunshine State, Casey became an activist for local anti-censorship organization and a public speaker on social justice and homeless issues. He has authored three stage plays on the air, Fruitproof Blues and But Who is Counting, later serving as an inspiration to authors the stories of the Good Vibe Trilogy, his first offering as a novelist. Born at the tail end of the baby's boomer, Casey is a father and grandfather who has always been amused and taken pride in his diverse interests. I can wake up to jazz, walk the doors, argue politics, analyze science fiction movies, scream at my fantasy football lineup, create a new cocktail, and enjoy a bawdy Broadway musical all in the same day. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today, Kaycee Evan. How are you doing, Kaycee?
Peter, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I enjoy this opportunity.
Yeah, it's awesome having you on the show today. I'm excited as well. So, Kaycee, could you tell us about your book, Just a Position from the Good Vibe Launch? And I want to say that that's quite an amazing title. Now, how does this book come about? What inspired you to write Just a Position from the Good Vibe Launch?
Well, actually, in one word, regret.
Oh.
A few years ago, during the pandemic, when we were all shut in over here,
Mm.
um, I started to think about life in general. And the one piece of my life that was missing from my youth was being involved as an artist, as a performer. And I used to be a musician and an actor,
Oh.
and I kind of left all that behind. And I realized I wasn't unhappy with the path that I went in life, but
Wow.
there was something missing. And so I started writing a kind of a stream of conscience, as it were, on how I was feeling. And when I was done with it, I said, you know what? This is a story. And the
Mm.
story became a play. And I showed the play to a few people, and they said, why don't you just turn this into a book?
Wow.
And so I did, my first one.
That's actually amazing. I love the inspiration and the comment, the making of the book. Sounds pretty interesting to me. Now, I also love to ask you, Casey, for readers who haven't read the book yet, and of course, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what we'd expect picking up the book?
Well, the book basically centers around, and the book, I should say, is the first of a trilogy. So there's two others coming, but it's a book about
Oh.
essentially two people, and it's told from different eras, one from the 1970s, the late 70s,
Mm.
and one in modern times, taking place in 2017.
Oh.
And the first book is a coming of age story of two people who are from very different backgrounds culturally, and they are part of a circle of friends who are very involved in their activities at school together.
Oh.
And after a little while, they have a romantic relationship that has an impact on the rest of their lives and
Mm.
their lives of their family and their friends for the next 4 decades. And so, this first book, which is The Paradise We Create, is the name of the subtitle of the book, is about those two young people in the late 70s
Mm.
coming together and forming a relationship.
Wow, that's quite amazing to know. I love the sound of this. And please, if you have a copy of the book there with you, could you show it to the
Yeah,
camera just so people can see what it looks like?
I will. And
Oh,
what you
volume
see on
one.
there, is the Good Vibe Lounge is actually named after the instrument that the main character in the book uh, played as a young person, which is called a vibraphone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a xylophone, but it was electronic, so it made like bell sounds.
Oh.
And so that's what that's all about.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for shedding more light on it. Now, I also love to ask you, Casey, as authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism. How do you react to negative reviews of your books if you've ever had one in time past?
Well, I'm reacting to it much better than I thought I would, because part of when I was a young person, I think part of the reason why I didn't pursue performing is because I hated auditions and I was so afraid of getting, rejected. So when I wrote this book, I was kind of concerned about how I would react. Luckily, I haven't had that many negative reviews, and the
Mm,
ones that I have had that have been critical, I think they've had very valid criticisms, and what I've enjoyed about those criticisms is nobody's really taken apart the story. They all say we like this story, we like the characters, but most of the criticism has been about the style of writing.
oh,
So it's made me do a lot of thinking and reading other people's work.
mm,
And like I said, I think some of the criticism is valid, but the more that I read, the more that I think that we all have our own styles, and
absolutely.
I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, but at the same time, as I'm working on the sequels, I am making some adjustments because some of
Mm.
that criticism has been valid.
Oh, that's good. I love your thought on this, and I love your take on the
Yeah.
criticism title. Sounds quite intriguing to me. Now, I'm also curious to know if you experienced any challenges while writing your book, and of course, there's a first book in the series, like you once mentioned. Now, if there is any, could you share with us what challenge it is and how you ultimately overcame it?
Well, I think it's kind of like what we were just talking about. I think when I started doing this, having never written a novel, I mean, I
Oh,
started writing some, but they never went anywhere.
yeah.
I knew how to write a play, because it was the character and then the dialogue and then the character and then the dialogue. But writing a novel and telling the story was different. So I
Absolutely.
started to follow the structure that I read about online, and you must do this and you must do that,
Mm,
and make sure you use words like said and asked and nothing else when you're writing dialogue.
yeah.
And um, so the challenge was that, and the challenge was the number of words. I tend to be wordy as I am right now.
Oh,
And so the number of words in the book itself, I was very concerned about, because
wow.
the first draft of it was huge. It was like Lord of the Rings. It was too big.
Wow.
And so I got some good advice from a friend of mine who had been a book editor, and she said, just turn this into a trilogy. Don't worry about it, and break the story up. So
Mm,
after doing that, I felt much more comfortable. And
wow.
like I said, since then I've done a lot of reading of other people's works, and I feel better about the direction that
What
I've
you've
chose. But
done.
the challenge was my style versus what the people say you're supposed to do when you write a book.
Well, I love that. I actually love that. I love your take on that. And I think it's much important and necessary to follow your own style, to follow one's own style. We don't talk alike. We all have different style when it comes to writing. Our voice differs from one person to another, just like genres differ from one author to another. So I think it's very important finding one's own voice and going alongside with it. So that sounds quite intriguing to know.
Absolutely. And the one thing that over and over, I heard people say, well, don't use all of these words to describe. Well, if somebody is
Absolutely.
shouting, I think you have to say Peter was shouting. You have to say exclaimed, you have to say cried, you have to say, you can't just say said, asked. It just, for
Mm,
me, it doesn't work. So the experts might not agree with me on this, but I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, that's good. I love your take on that. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, apart from just a position from the Good Vibe Lounge, do you have any other works you've altered or maybe currently working on?
Well, I'm currently working on the sequel. The sequel to this will go from the 70s into the 80s as the two main characters in the book go in different directions and in life, and at the same time, we follow the modern story to find out the repercussions of that.
Mm.
And that story gets a little bit deeper and a little bit darker. It's called "The Challenges We Endure," and
Oh,
again, it's the second book in the trilogy, and I'm in the hopefully in the final editing stages of that, but
oh,
it's significantly shorter than the first book, so it's going to be a faster read. And at the same time, I've started to work a little bit on the last part of the trilogy, which is
mm.
called "The Destiny We Embrace."
Wow.
So it's kind of, and that'll finish the story in the 2000s part of the
Wow, that's
timeline.
actually, you have captivating titles, and I think I love that about you. That's amazing.
Well, thank you. I tell people all the time, and I say it in the book. With the main character says it in the book, is juxtapositions. Which is the blending of different things that
Yeah.
may look different and sound different to make something that is pleasant. Juxtapositions was one of my favorite words to use as a youngster to make myself sound smart. So
Oh.
I kept that one in the title no matter what.
That's amazing. And there's this question that just came to my mind now. I've always loved asking authors over and over again. Whenever I read a book that sounds very amazing to me, I kind of sometimes get lost on how these authors come together to pull words together. Like, how did they come with the ideas of bringing this word together in a way that it brings out something good and it makes an amazing novel? And I love to
Mhm.
ask you, how did you get the ideas to writing your book? How does it come to you? I don't know if you'd love to talk about that.
Well, well, here's the thing. Most of the book, especially the first one, is based on my own personal experiences,
Oh,
my own life, my own characters, my own
wow.
family and friends.
Mm,
However, what has gone on is because of the regrets I have and the disconnections with that part of my life, I've kind of reimagined some of the outcomes. So
mm,
it's even though it's not a biography, I was inspired by things that happened in my life,
wow.
funny things, sad things, especially in the 1977 part of the book. My adolescence was kind of chaotic, like a lot of teenagers have.
Wow.
But I was a girl crazy guy. I chased as many girls as I could,
Oh,
and the main female protagonist in it, she had her own agenda, and so ultimately, our relationship, which as you get further in the book, becomes fictionalized between those two characters. I just kind of went with a story that was a reimagined outcome. That's
mm.
what I'll say.
That's amazing, actually. I love your take and I love your answers to these questions. That's quite great. Thanks for, giving us that tip, I'd say. Now, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered ever since you got published?
Well, ever since I got published, I think that it's just trying to figure out how to get the book out there. I think that networking with other independent authors has been a really very good experience.
Absolutely.
Independent authors like yourself, I think it's been a very good experience for me, and that number of authors that I talk to and work with and share experiences with grows every day.
Mm,
I think in the initial stages of it is to try to how to get it published was a challenge because there were just so many people coming at you from different,
Yeah,
different places. And it's really hard to tell who's legitimate and who is not. And I was
absolutely.
lucky enough to meet, simply by luck. There was a woman who was sitting in my bar that I have,
Oh,
that I worked for, and she was reading a book. And I was thinking about the length of my book, and I asked her, "How many pages is your book?" And she told me what the number of pages were, and I looked at the book and I said, "Well, that looks like a reasonable size book. I think I could do this." So I started to not worry about the words, and I explained to her, "This is why I'm asking you." And it turned out she was also an independent author and had a
oh,
book that she had on Amazon. So we
oh,
started to talk, and then we started having a email conversation back and forth. And
mm,
she put me in touch with the people who helped her design her book and get it online. And it was a great way to start. And
wow,
so,
yeah,
yeah, it was a great experience. And so so I keep building my networking with other authors like yourself, and so many have been, so great, and I love reading their books and I love their reviews of my books. So it's been a really good experience in that regard.
yeah, that's quite amazing and quite fun to know. Thanks for giving us
Yeah.
that short, brief story behind it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's lovely
Yeah,
to
it was
know.
really something.
No, thank you. Now, is there anything that you'd love to share with the viewers about your book or writing journey that we did not mention in this interview and you'd love the viewers to know?
Well, like I said, it is inspired by, personal experiences with a good dose of fiction involved as well. So it's a combination of both of those things. I
Yeah.
think if you're a fan of the 1970s and that era, which was so transformative in American society and probably the world over, I think it's a fun read because so many things have changed technologically since then that we
Mm,
take for granted. Like we didn't have cell phones back then and things like
absolutely.
that. So I think if you're a fan of that, you'll enjoy it. If you're a fan of romance, I think there's a nice dose of romance.
That's
There's
great.
some and I really like look into the cultural differences that were happening in the 70s, and that kids my age back then tried to
Mm,
bridge the gap.
mm,
And then in the modern story, that follows through, it takes a look at what the outcomes were for the people that were involved. So it's like I
mm.
said, it's telling from two voices, the 1970s and the 21st century.
Yeah, that's quite amazing to know. That's pretty much lovely to know. Now, Casey, as a published author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book? What would you advise people in this category?
Well, kind of sort of what we said earlier. I think that more and more every day, I feel strongly about creating your own style and not worrying too much about. I
Mm,
mean, I think we have to pay attention to grammar and things like that, but
absolutely.
I think there's something to writing in your own style, writing in your own voice, and I think you have to be happy with that voice. And if you're happy with it, I
Mm,
think that's the main thing. That the authors that I've talked to and talked with them about, and again, I've gotten the same kind of feedback. So I think that's the main thing that I would say is that say it in your own voice,
mm.
and be comfortable with how you're expressing it.
Yeah, thank you so much for your advice. I'm hopeful that viewers, including myself, would love to utilize it. Now, Casey, in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview and would love to get a copy of your book, on what platform are they available on for purchase?
Well, right now it's only available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, but it's also available on there as a paperback and a hardback.
Mm,
The best thing to do is to put my name in the search engine there, and
Kaycee
uh,
Evans.
Kaycee another Evans, and you'll see the book juxtapositions will come up. And also facebook.com, you can put in Good Vibe Lounge as one word, and it should bring up the page that has the link to the book as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Kaycee Evan's books directly on Amazon. So thank you so much, Kaycee, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome having this conversation with you.
Peter, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity and I appreciate the invitation to be with you. And as I said, I really enjoy reading your work as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.